Okay, today we are going to talk about Bullet Train. Bullet Train is a movie, came out, I have no idea when it came out. Came out a while ago. Either way, I'd heard it's fun, wacky, and fairly interesting. And so I was browsing Netflix, trying to figure out what to watch next. John Wick 2 and 3 just aren't that great, so I was trying to figure out what's next. What's a good action film? I watched The Gray Man. I'm going through an action kick, so trying to figure out what's next. What's next on the menu? So we got Bullet Train, and so far I'm really enjoying it. Right now I'm halfway through the movie. I always seem to be the type of person, either because I get interrupted or something else comes up, to where I can never really finish a movie in one go, and that's just my lot in life, and I've accepted it, and here we are. So Bullet Train, the movie, starts with a hospital. So what we've got here in the hospital, we have a young boy in the hospital who is dying. He's dying. He looks pretty bad. So immediately we're starting off the story. Minute one, starting off, something's happened. So this is kind of the question, the leading question that we are going to be drawing our audience in with. Something has happened. All right, something happened to the boy. We have this character who is introduced as the father. He's, looking a little bit disheveled, obviously very distraught, trying to figure out what's happening or what to do about his son, who is actively sitting there passively, more like dying from there. So this is kind of the intro that we've got. So immediately with the father, we have a very sympathetic character, because almost immediately, we feel bad for him. His young son is like 8 or 10 or something, who's dying. This is insane. This is horrible. This is every parent's nightmare, basically, where you're sitting there helpless watching your son dying. So immediately we have a sympathetic character, which is good. So we immediately introduce and kind of start off with that. Bingo. We're golden from there. Next, we're introduced to another man with an even longer goatee, who is introduced as the grandfather. And during their conversation, there's this kind of, you get the dynamic where that the father over here is a failure of some kind, because he didn't protect his son. At least that's the view of the grandfather. And then we understand, as this is going on, that something has happened. And again, this is kind of using you to do better. Basically, this is kind of what the impetus to his character, or at least the communication is told. So you are a failure, and if you don't want to be a failure going forward, you need to do better. And then we also realize that someone pushed the boy. So somebody pushed the boy, and that's how he wound up in the hospital, which is interesting, because then, of course, it starts to answer this question of, okay, what happened to the boy, which immediately leads into another question, was, who did this? So this is what we're trying to draw the audience in. And so all of this whole scene kind of plays out. And we are now 3 minutes in. And this is pretty good, because again, what you want to think of is each moment, every minute, your audience could leave you. Why are they continuing to watch you? If you want them to continue to watch you, you have to have something that continually draws them in. And usually what it is these developing questions that I'm kind of going on about. So what we have here is something happened. We're trying to figure out, why is the kid dying? Who's the dad? What's going on? We figure out, okay, he's the father. That's his son. There's the grandfather who thinks he should have done better. Okay, all that's answered. He fell off. Okay, fell off a building. All right, we got that. That's answered. Easy peasy, problem solved. But wait, that leads into somebody pushed the kid, which then leads into the next question, who did this? So this is minute 3. We have a sympathetic character, which is, cha-ching, this is good. We have a sympathetic victim, cha-ching, we want justice for the kid. This is what we're doing. We have an impetus, do better, from the grandfather. Grandfather samurai there is telling him to do better. And all of this leads into who did this, which kind of leads naturally into the question of find out who did this. So this is section 1. And then this next part is kind of where we get into the kind of the main aspect and the main drawing point. And this next part kind of becomes the theme or stylistic aspect, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, for Bullet Train. This is something that the story does really good, is we switch characters. We're switching character, we're switching point of view, we're switching story. And you'll kind of see what we're eventually building towards is kind of this idea of what I kind of you could call a powder keg story. This is another one. Another great aspect with it is that I don't know if you guys have ever seen that, but if you ever take a watermelon and put a rubber band around it, of course it's kind of nice, but nothing happens. And then you put a second, and then you put a third, and then you put fourth, and then you put fifth, and slowly we build up, but eventually, nothing really happens too fast. But eventually, if you get up to like 1,000 rubber bands or something, what you're doing is you're adding to this tension because the watermelon starts, bend inward. It starts to become a skinnier watermelon. And then eventually, this thing is going to explode. And this is kind of, again, what the story is building towards. We don't know this yet, but just keep this image in mind, at least of the powder keg. I'm not sure if the watermelon works out, but we're going with the powder keg. So we get a new character introduced who is played by Bradley Pitt. Oops. Let's go. Bradley Pitt. And he is playing our character named Ladybug because they're lucky. So he has been introduced and being brought in for a quote-unquote snatch and grab mission. So it's going to be easy peasy. Obviously, it's not. You could almost assume this because you're an audience member. Because obviously, if it was an easy snatch and grab, there would be no story. Again, it would be interesting if you did a story where, from one point of view, character's point of view, everything goes right and he just moves about his life. Meanwhile, there's chaos and just distress and everything else around. That doesn't happen in this one, so don't worry about that. But something interesting to think about for a new one. So we introduced a new character, and he's fairly sympathetic. We like him. He's funny. It's interesting because he's playing a hitman who's trying to it's like he's I don't know, like a high school basketball coach or something. He's trying to psych himself up for the next game or the next mission. He's really it's yeah, I don't know how to describe it. He's kind of part hippie, part new age aspect where he's really trying to get his mojo back. It seems like a word he would want to use, but he can't seem to. And he's working with his therapist, Barry, who's really good, who's doing a great work on him. Barry, of course, doesn't know that he's a hitman, but Barry, is giving him all these helpful tricks, toxic in, toxic out, look for peaceful outcomes, and peaceful outcomes will find you. This aspect where he's trying to do this. But either way, he always talks about how unlucky. There we go. Close. You know what? We're going to scratch that. We're going to try again. There we go. Unlucky. Unlucky is, and people always end up dying. And of course, his handler, the lady on the phone, is like, relax. Obviously, it's not going to happen. Just kind of, try your best. Obviously, it's not going to happen. Try your best. Go about your day. You're going to make it work. You're going to make it work. Okay. So either way, he turns out is getting on a train. And he's after a briefcase. So we're after a briefcase. We've got a mission. This is kind of the smash and grab target. And this is kind of what it is. And then while we are on the train, we're introduced to two other characters. So again, this is where we're starting to add to this powder keg. We're trying to add to this powder keg as far as people and stuff, because the question is always, what could go wrong, basically. We're trying to figure out what's happening because you're adding all these interesting characters where you're not sure, honestly, how they intersect or how they're going to stand against each other, but you're pretty sure that they're going to fight or come into conflict. And so this is where we are then introduced into these other characters named Tangerine and Lemon. And these guys are straight out of a Guy Ritchie movie. These are very much, they got the British accents. They got the British accents. They've got the silly nicknames. They got the funny quirks. Lemon keeps going on about Thomas the Tank Engine, and Tangerine is trying to be a little bit more posh, kind of play the straight man to Lemon's kind of silliness, more or less, for it. So there you have it. That's what they're trying to introduce to. And these two guys are just on the train, and we don't know what they are. And then we go back to Brad Pitt. And so this is one interesting thing that they do really well with Tangerine and Lemon, is where you're slowly introducing characters. And this makes it seem a little bit less like the story placed them there and more like the characters just happen to be there. Because, of course, when we're first introduced to Tangerine and Lemon, they're just passengers and they steal something. And so this is kind of where you think, okay, maybe they're thieves. And then we move back to Brad Pitt's character. And so what you have in this mind is, oh, okay, those guys are thieves. We'll see what they kind of come up with, but we don't really know much about them. Anyway, we're going back to this. He keeps hunting for this briefcase. He's looking for it. Apparently, it's got a sticker on the handle, and he's trying to find it. And again, they kind of lay it out. So 6 cars, 6 economy, 10 luxury, or vice versa. Probably 6 first class, 10 economy buses or cars, probably cars. So it's big, long train, 30 people. So he's trying to do the math, and he's like, oh my gosh, it's going to take forever to find the briefcase. So he's continually hunting. And again, we're building and building. And turns out then, at some point, we realize that Mr. Father over here is actually on the train. And he's trying to answer this question. Who did this? And an interesting thing to think about with this story, and I think that it does really well, is think of this in terms of interest trade-offs versus payoffs. So what you have is you have your intro character, which is father and the son and the grandfather, and they're trying to figure out, what happened or what to do, everything from there. So we kind of have the question of something happened. So the something happened takes us this far, and then once we figure out someone pushed him, the interest is going to die at this point. The mystery is going to die unless we revive it or transform it into something else. And as this is going to die, then it transfers into someone pushed him. He fell. Let's say he fell off a building, but then it turns out somebody pushed him. So the interest is rekindled. And this is kind of what this interest is. And then we're going to see what's going to happen. And then we cut to something else. And then we cut over here to Brad Pitt's character. And Brad Pitt's character, is we're introducing to him, we kind of like him, but we can't just watch him be himself forever. Something needs to happen. So he gets his stash. That's interesting. He's going on. It turns out he's got a job. Okay, so after he's got this, he's got a job. So now we're interested in figuring out what the job is. And as we figure out the job is here, okay, now we know what the job is. The job is to get the briefcase. We got to figure out where to find the briefcase. And then we cut to Lemon and Tangerine. And they're going on, and they're thieves. And as we're kind of getting bored of them, then we jump back to Brad Pitt's character. You can kind of think of these different aisles. And this is where the attention of the story is going to work. So we got father up here. We've got Ladybug over here. And we've got Tangerine and Lemon. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to transfer this audience interest from each character. And you don't have to have, this is something where you don't have to have a whole bunch of cast of characters. Again, it can really work to have just a few characters do this, but you have to have, what you want to keep an eye out and keep track of is the interest. What is interesting about the story? What is happening? What is going to get the audience to the next 2 minutes? What's going to get them to the next 3 minutes? What's going to do the next 4 minutes, 5 minutes? What's going to happen? And this is where it is. And you can have some that are quick. Each of these bits are really quick because this is a fast-paced story. It's kind of go bump, 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 bump. It's jumping from story to story, just a plot, 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 character. What's this? What's that? What's that? What's that? You can have really slow ones. Like a really slow interest build is kind of like that one, the opening to Blade Runner 2040 or 2077, the one with I can't think of his name. He's the boxer guy, Dave Bautista. Dave Bautista's sitting there, and then that gosh dang pot that basically carries the whole scene that we're trying to figure out, what's going on, and it's just got a whole bunch of bubblies, ominous. It's bubbling ominously on this guy's kitchen, and we don't know what's going on, and we're trying to figure out what's going on, and this thing just keeps bubbling and bubbling and bubbling and bubbling and bubbling, and then the scene ends. And you're just like, that seems ridiculous how that could work. But it works. It's interesting. Again, the point is, the only thing that matters is whether it works or not. If it works, then who cares? That's how it is. If it works, who cares? So what we've got here is to think about this is each time the story is kind of developing, we're cutting away because each individual story is probably only about 10 minutes or something like that. I don't know, 10 or 15 minutes per character. And then you got to split that up, and then that makes our 2+ hour movie. And each time one spot gets slow or gets something like this, it develops. And the other thing that you're going to do is when you introduce a movie you introduce a movie or a plot element. Let's say this is a relative level of intensity, basically. So it can start really low intensity, high intensity. What you do want to keep an eye out for is, where have you started and where is the audience at this point, 5 minutes into the story or 10 minutes in the story? You know, is it the same level of intensity, or is it more intense or less intense, basically, from here? So if you start with a really low intense movie where there's just not a lot happening and not a lot going on, you need to change it. You need to ramp up. This is kind of where a lot of the stories follow the classic plot line example. You know, they say they have your intro minute. This is your first 10 minutes. This is the chase scene from Casino Royale. This is that one scene from Inglourious Bastards, where Hans Landa gets introduced. This is the all the Mission Impossible scenes. They have it where it's like the first 10 minutes are them getting done with the job or something, and then this is going to lead into the next job. This is the first 10 minutes, and then you have like something like this, and then a lull, and then a this, and a lull, and a this, and then you have the lowest moment, the fall. This is where all hope seems lost, and then you have the triumph, but wait, we succeed, and then the downturn, and then the denouement, as all the English classes learned, and this is the end. This is how it goes. So this is kind of what you're keeping an eye on, because again, this, wherever you start here, if you're going to imagine this is a scale that goes all the way, you know, it's an infinite scale up and an infinite scale down. Wherever you start, you need to raise up. This is kind of where, because you think about it, there's otherwise, it's all relative. It's relative. Relative action, relative tension. Because otherwise, Mad Max would be the most exciting movie ever. Because it starts off with like wacky zany explosions and these crazy, you know, necrotic, white skin, pale looking freakazoids running around murdering people, blood banks, and all this cars and explosions. But it's not the best movie ever. It's really good. It's not the best movie ever because it's this relative action for it. Because if you have a movie where nothing happens, but you can keep the audience interested, and then something happens, that one action by relative measurement is going to be huge. This is kind of like those scenes where you have somebody, you know, who's sitting at a table, or a duel or something like that. You know, where it's the good, the bad, the ugly is a really good one like that. A good example. I'll try and draw the poncho and the hat. They sit there on this Mexican standoff for like, I don't know, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, where they're just sitting there. And then one shot happens. You know, the good shoots the bad, and the ugly's gun has been unloaded or doesn't work or something like that. And this is so exciting, but it's just one shot. John Wick, the story I was talking about, he kills like 100+ people, which means there's like 7 trillion bullets, basically, that are probably shot in the whole movie. Got a few more zeros to go. 7 trillion bullets in the whole movie, but those don't have the same impact because it's just relative. You're building up to the singular moment. And so this is kind of what the thing is. So Bullet Train kind of follows the Mad Max thing where it's like super actiony right from the beginning. And so what we need to do is we need to keep amping it up, amping it up, amping it up, amping it up, amping it up. And so how we're going to do that, and this is one thing that they do really, really well, is they have all these key components that kind of come into play and are basically working to continue to add to this tension. So what we've got here is we've got the kid. We've got the kid. We got to protect the kid. Okay, we're going to look for the kid. And then we've got the briefcase. So we've got some guys, and they're fighting over the briefcase. And we've got the briefcase. And then, we've got this weird, creepy little girl thing. And we've got the father. Okay, this is kind of keep adding more, adding more, adding more. He stole the briefcase. Briefcase is stolen. That's here. We're getting more and more and more from here. And then it turns out this one is, kid's dead. Who killed him? This is bizarre. Okay, we got to figure out this guy. Then this is, turns out Wolf is here. That weird Mexican guy who murders a lot of people. Wolf is here. We get his backstory. It's introduced, but then it turns out, okay, then they fight. This is another action, a rising action. They have the fight there. Okay, so they fight and they get over that. And then it turns out that, we kill Wolf. Wolf's dead, so that's another aspect of it. But then it turns out, we find out later, of course, over here or something, that Wolf was after somebody else who murdered his whole family and his wife and his clan. He was at revenge. So there's another mystery assassin. So we got to figure out who the mystery assassin is. Let's see. And then, of course, Tangerine and Lemon have to deal with people outside the train. You know, maybe here is, you know, the Yakuza or Triad members outside the train who want to kill them to make sure they're following the White Death's orders. And then over here, we've got a snake that we introduced way back in the beginning that's super poisonous. And then over here, we've got, he fills water with the sleeping pill. And basically what you have is you have all these little moments that just continue building, and they're all adding to this powder keg. And so what we're waiting for is every time one explodes, basically, so you could think of the Wolf versus Ladybug as an explosion, and then Wolf dies, and normally that is a denouement, a falling action. But then it turns out you can transform that into rising action again by, guess what? Turns out he's after somebody, and there's another mystery assassin somewhere around here, which means, okay, so what we thought was solved turns out is just leading to an even bigger mystery. And this is what you keep adding for it. And you keep adding different stories, you keep adding different characters, you keep building all this towards everything else. And this is kind of where you begin to get this whole thing going on. It's just this continually building action that's kind of moving towards the end, which of course is keeping the audience engaged. You know, the transformation of these questions, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? So long as you have that, the audience will continue to watch your story, read your story. They'll keep being interested, which is just always the best thing possible. So there you go. Yeah, I kind of just wanted to talk about the intro scene for it and kind of show you what the story does really well, and kind of what are some aspects where it does really well, and why this story is unique, why it seems to be well received. I haven't looked at it on like IMDb or anything, but it seems to be doing quite good. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'm looking to watch the rest of the movie, and I hope you guys enjoy this, and I will see you in the next one.